You're 30,000 feet above the ground, surrounded by strangers, nowhere to run, and all you can do is wait. But sometimes the most terrifying passengers aren't the ones you can see. Tonight I'm going to tell you 3 real stories that happened on real flights. Disturbing encounters with passengers who seemed off, too quiet, too strange, or maybe not even supposed to be there. These aren't urban legends. These stories come straight from people who swore they experienced them. So buckle up, because the skies, they're not always so friendly. This first story comes from a man named Daniel. Picture this. It's the dead of night. You're crammed into a red-eye flight, exhausted after a long day, just wanting to get home. The plane is a symphony of snores and the rustle of blankets. You're in that weird half-awake, half-asleep state. Daniel was there. He settled into his window seat, pulled down the little plastic shade and tried to get comfortable. He glanced at his roommate, the man in the aisle seat. He was older, maybe in his late 60s, wearing a meticulously pressed suit that seemed out of place in the casual atmosphere of a red-eye flight. Something about the man's stillness, the way he sat rigidly upright, staring straight ahead, sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. He tried to shake off the feeling, figuring the man was just as tired as everyone else. But as the flight wore on, the feeling wouldn't go away. It was the whispering. At first, Daniel thought he was imagining it, just the low hum of the plane's engine or the murmur of a distant conversation. But as he strained to hear, it became clear. The man in the suit was whispering, not to himself, but directly into the seat in front of him. Daniel couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, insistent, like a prayer or a curse, whispered into the void. The man's gaze was fixed, unblinking, and Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He tried to focus on anything else, his book, the in-flight magazine, the blurry lights of a distant city passing below. But the whispering continued, relentless, unnerving. Then it happened. The man turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting Daniel's with an intensity that made him recoil. For a moment their eyes locked, and Daniel felt a wave of pure primal fear wash over him. The man's lips moved, and this time Daniel could hear him clearly. He wasn't whispering anymore. In a low, raspy voice he said, "They can't hear me, but they can hear you." Daniel's blood ran cold. He couldn't explain it, but he knew in that moment that something was deeply, terribly wrong. He fumbled for the call button, his heart pounding in his chest. A flight attendant, all smiles and apologies for the delay, eventually made her way to his row. "Is there something I can help you with, sir?" she asked. "The man," Daniel stammered, "the man next to me, he's—" He trailed off, looking at the aisle seat. It was empty. The flight attendant frowned, her smile faltering. "Sir, there's no one sitting there." Daniel felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. He looked around, but the other passengers seemed oblivious, lost in their own worlds. Had he imagined the whole thing? He spent the rest of the flight in a daze, his eyes glued to the empty seat beside him. When the plane finally landed, he practically leapt out of his seat, eager to escape the confines of the aircraft. As he made his way down the aisle, he glanced back one last time. The seat was still empty. But as he reached the gate, a terrifying thought struck him. He'd never checked to see if the man got off the plane. To this day, Daniel can't shake the feeling that he shared that flight with something else. He's never flown red-eye again. Our next story takes place on a sunny afternoon flight, a stark contrast to the eerie darkness of our last tale. Rachel, a young mother, was travelling with her husband and 2 children. They'd secured a row to themselves, the kids bouncing in their seats with excited energy. As the plane taxied to the runway, Rachel noticed a young girl sitting alone in the row across the aisle, 24F. The girl couldn't have been older than 5 or 6, with large dark eyes and a mop of curly brown hair. She sat quietly, clutching a worn teddy bear, her gaze fixed on the seatback in front of her. Rachel, her heart melting at the sight of the little girl travelling alone, tried to catch her eye and offer a reassuring smile. But the girl didn't seem to notice her. As the plane climbed higher, the usual cacophony of a family flight filled the cabin. Babies crying, children giggling, the clinking of plastic cups as drinks were served. Rachel's own children were engrossed in their colouring books, and she found herself glancing back at the little girl in 24F. She was still there, frozen in the same position, her eyes staring blankly ahead. Something felt off. When the drink cart finally rolled around, Rachel ordered apple juice for her children and on impulse asked for an extra one for the little girl across the aisle. The little one travelling alone? Such a sweetheart, she's been so well behaved, Rachel said to the flight attendant, gesturing towards 24F. The flight attendant's brow furrowed slightly as she glanced down the aisle. "Ma'am, are you sure? There's no one sitting there." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. "But I saw her, a little girl, brown hair, teddy bear. She's been there the whole flight." The flight attendant, now visibly concerned, leaned closer. "Ma'am, I assure you, there's no child sitting in 24F. Would you like me to get you something for your nerves? A glass of water, perhaps?" Rachel, shaken and confused, declined the offer. She took the extra juice box for her own child, her eyes darting back to 24F. The seat was empty. She tried to convince herself it was a trick of the light, a figment of her imagination, but deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. Days later, back home, Rachel couldn't shake the memory of the little girl on the plane. She found herself scrolling through online forums, searching for stories of similar experiences. And that's when she stumbled upon a chilling piece of information. Years ago, on a flight with the same airline, a young girl had tragically passed away during a sudden and severe bout of turbulence. Her seat number? 24F. The details were eerily similar, the age, the description, even the teddy bear. Rachel felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She realized with a growing sense of horror that she hadn't just imagined the little girl on the plane. She'd seen something else. Our final story plunges into the heart of the unknown. A chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved. Eli, a seasoned traveller on a business trip, settled into his routine for a long-haul flight, noise-cancelling headphones on, eye mask in place, ready for some much-needed sleep. He drifted off to the familiar drone of the plane's engines, lulled by the gentle rocking of the aircraft. But something jolted him awake. He wasn't sure what it was, a sound, a feeling, a change in pressure. He ripped off his eye mask, his heart pounding. The cabin was pitch black, not the usual dimmed lights for sleeping passengers, but a complete and utter absence of light. He fumbled for the overhead light, but it wouldn't turn on. Panic surged through him. He unbuckled his seatbelt and stumbled into the aisle, his hands outstretched, searching for something, anything familiar. A cold, metallic surface met his touch. The galley. He felt his way along the counter, his fingers brushing against empty coffee pots and discarded snack wrappers. Where was everyone? Then he heard it. A voice, distorted and staticky, crackling over the intercom. "We apologize for the slight technical difficulties," the voice said, a strange sing-song lilt to its tone. "Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened. This will only take a moment." The voice sent chills down Eli's spine. It wasn't the usual calm, reassuring tone of a pilot or flight attendant. This voice was different. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, bathing the cabin in a harsh fluorescent glow. Eli blinked, momentarily blinded, his heart still racing. He looked around. The cabin was no longer empty. Passengers were back in their seats, most asleep, some reading, others staring blankly ahead. It was as if nothing had happened. He stumbled back to his seat, his mind reeling. Had he imagined the whole thing? Was it a bizarre, stress-induced dream? As he buckled himself in, his hand brushed against something in his pocket. He pulled it out, a keycard. It was cold to the touch, heavier than it looked, with a single word etched on its surface. "Exit." Eli stared at the keycard, a sense of dread creeping over him. He tried to show it to the woman sitting next to him, but the letters on the card seemed to blur and shift as she looked at it. He tried again, showing it to a passing flight attendant, but the same thing happened. The word "exit" vanished before their eyes. He spent the rest of the flight in a state of heightened anxiety, the keycard a chilling reminder of whatever he'd experienced. When the plane finally landed, he practically ran off, desperate to escape the confines of the aircraft. He never saw the keycard again. To this day, Eli can't explain what happened on that flight. He's left with more questions than answers, A lingering fear that some doors are not meant to be opened. Some secrets best left buried at 30,000 feet. And sleep lightly. 3 flights, 3 stories, and 1 chilling reminder. When you're trapped in a sealed cabin at 30,000 feet, cut off from the world below, you might not be flying alone, even if the seat next to you looks empty. We like to think planes are safe, logical, controlled. But sometimes logic takes a back seat. Sometimes something else boards that flight with you. So next time you fly, take a second look at the person beside you. Listen closely to those whispers. And maybe don't sit in 24F.